Hello and welcome to another week in hell. Hopefully I will have the introduction to this book finished so I can, I don't know, move on to other stuff for a couple of weeks or so before I have to get back to more of this book. Did I have... there we go. That was other stuff. Why can't... Okay, there we go. I found my microphone part thingy. I can stream. I know what I'm doing. Don't mind me. This is the original transphobes book, A Passion for Friends. If you weren't here for the other parts, which are on a playlist now specifically related to this book, here is the introductory. Here are my notes. The personal is political and the political is personal is like the first quote, which to some degree that's true. But then apparently she accuses most feminists as being socialists who are indoctrinating people through universities, which is a very anti-Semitic framework for things. Has a problem with feminism being classified as a general type, although to some degree this person, Miss Raymond here, classifies feminism as a general type some of the times with this book. Frames deeper friendships as having a purpose to influence power structures. Has this... There's a lot of weird definitions in this. Definitions. She creates a bunch of unnecessarily complex versions of things, so I have to take notes to understand things, and even then she doesn't always explain. At least not right away. So, heteroreality, the worldview that women exist with relation to men, has consistently perceived women together as women alone. That aspect of things is better explained through toxic masculinity, in my opinion, because toxic masculinity is where women don't have any real agency to make choices. So conceiving that any woman could make a choice relates to things. Thank you, Sinister Intelligence, for joining the brood. Also, hopefully enjoyed the being on stream yesterday. So, originally seems to describe what I can only understand as internalized sexism. Miss Raymond seems to create a hierarchical system of women. The quote she uses is, again, I use Mary Daly's device of capitalizing self to distinguish between the man-made feminine self and the imposed internalized false self of women, and the authentic self which women are recreating. Basically, there's the women who are true women who are truly not true women, sorry, women who are genuinely themselves and women who aren't themselves, and this would be clearly determined or analyzed by other people. So, um, which is problematic on so many levels. So, she says the primary attraction of women for women is neither natural nor ontological, which is a strange quote. Another quote: only the woman who is self-created can be an original woman, not fabricated by man, and a friend to other women. So, once again, I mean, that's the thing with a lot of texts like these. They sprinkle in a little bit of fact and then they twist things. So this is essentially factors into the hierarchy. So only women who are essentially true to themselves can be real women, and other women are just catering to men. And that's not... You don't have a way to determine whether someone is true to themselves. That's their decision, not yours. Vital self, true self, vital women, women true to themselves. She doesn't explicitly explain these things, and some of these I had to take notes after she first introduces the word. Gin affection, defined as women to women attraction, influence, and movement. So she puts them all together for this. Hetero relations expresses the wide range of effective social, political, and economic relations that are ordained between men and women by men. So this is essentially, once again, something that, by the way, hey, trees. Wait, no, wait. Trees. It does help that I have that as a thing I can do in Twitch. So, hetero relations, she essentially describes what effectively is, so the negative aspects would be toxic masculinity, and also the view which views men as having the only are the only ones with agency. So once again, she has formulated a different thing to explain something that's simpler to explain with a different definition. Anyways, in many ways, gin affection is a synonym for female friendship. So this is a weird... I'll get down to the next part of quotes. That's a quote from her. So another quote is, in any strong sense of the word friendship, however, male citizens of the polis were not friends. If we regard this friendship of men as homo affection, as men attracted to men, we see that such affection was best superficially homosexual and at worst murderously effective. Male citizen friends killed each other for power and objectified each other, especially young boys, for sexual gratification. The latter tradition has long been sustained, but in the gay male community's insistent defense of boy love. Essentially, Miss Raymond blatantly against gay men and implying they're pedophiles, because I know this is a shock. The person who declared themselves a feminist and helped create a lot of anti-trans views is, in fact, an ex-nun who is basing a lot of her views on conservative stuff. Uses androgyny weirdly as a unification of male and female from separation. That one's hard to explain. It's just, she uses androgyny weird. So here's another quote. Hetero relations have also affected theories and realities of feminism by defining feminism as the equality of women with men rather than the autonomy, independence, and love of the female self in affinity with others like herself, her sisters, or her true self. That would be the implication. This definition places feminism at a false starting point. That is, woman in relation to man rather than woman in relation to woman. Basically, she is suggesting equality is inherently bad and women should focus on self-reflection instead. That is the essence of what she's saying. At the very least, that's all I can get out of it. On a very, very twisted philosophical level, you can make a statement like that, but like the realities of the end results of applying that statement to the real world is just, yeah, it's suggesting that women shouldn't fight for equality. Oh well, yeah, feminism to me has never meant equality of women with men. I had that quote right afterwards. I forgot about that one. So, Miss Raymond has a strong attitude of dichotomy that women cannot truly have power unless that power is given by other women. And power dynamics don't work that way. You have to, like, fight to reclaim rights. And so, in essence, that's not any power taken is you forced someone to give you something. It's hard to discern the difference between that, them giving it to you and you taking it for yourself. So I don't think it's generally a helpful thing. But here we go. I do understand why gin affection, or sorry, I do not understand why gin affection does not translate into lesbian love for many women. Is a quote from this book. The introduction of this book, which is way too long, by the way. So Miss Raymond doesn't seem to understand how women can be close friends without banging, is my assumption of what she means by lesbian love. That being said, I don't know if given how much she twists and makes up new definitions of things, I'm not sure if she considers sex to be a factor to lesbian stuff. So, and here's one of my favorite ones. Contrary to popular stereotype and pseudo-biological theories, women are not born lesbians. Women become lesbians out of choice. This is another quote from this person. And being a lesbian as a choice is a very concerning attitude to have. Apparently, Miss Raymond suggests well-written women in stories are inherently, in a sense, lesbians due to question mark. I'm not sure Miss Raymond has a reason for everything that she declares as a truth. Lesbian existence, woman-centered life regardless of romance or sex. So yeah, there we go. I forgot about that weird definition of being a lesbian. One of my favorite ones. Unlike science, which avoids critical judgment, philosophy has never been able to escape it. There is perpetual critical judgment of science. Science is inherently not about absolute truth. Science has always been about this is the best we can figure out in terms of describing the world. Unfortunately, when female otherness has been treated as positive, it has sometimes been grounded in female biology by both conservative and radical feminists. Yeah, but unfortunately, I'm pretty sure Miss Raymond also grounds it in biology, even though she says that's a bad thing. Which, I mean, that is a general problem with her thought process. So, it would be simplifying the complexity of that culture to see female friendship as the result of some essentialist capability of women to bond with each other. Now, that statement I would not necessarily disagree with, but I'm pretty sure the way she describes her philosophy in this book, that is essentially what she's saying. So she's saying, I'm not saying this, and then says it. And then she uses something, gin authority, which I have no idea what she means by that. I might find out later. I might not. And then a state of atrocity. The atrocities forced against women by women for men. That is, as best I can ascertain, her definition of that. She says, essentially, when women see bad stuff happening to women and feel bad, women can't empower each other or bond with each other. Which is a very messed up attitude to have. Essentially saying that if women empathize with other women, they can't, for bad things, they can't build each other up. Which, I mean, on a very loose level, there is something you can technically take away from that, which is that, but not in the way she's describing it. Because you do need to have a certain amount of self-care when fighting for rights. Otherwise, you won't be able to. So you can't just focus on the bad stuff. You need to also take in what can be done about things. And also she uses the term female colonization, which I don't understand. And effects of female colonization in all its forms is the end of a sentence that she writes. No idea what she's talking about. But now we are on to the next section as I try to understand more of the general reasoning that has been popularized and fuels a lot of transphobes and makes certain transphobes feel justified about their position. So the method of this chapter in the introduction, by the way, we're still in the introduction, we're not in part one. The method of this book, genealogy. The history of kin affection is the history of a particular group of women. I almost have to go back to that definition again. Woman to woman attraction, influence. Okay, yeah. That history has not been charted, and one aim of scholarship on female friendship should be to trace selected lines of descent between and among women who have been, are, can be friends. That is to do a genealogy of female friendship. So, like, first off, what? I almost feel like I need to say this every time because these are so bloated. Like, that was 2 sentences, and the second sentence was practically a paragraph long. She's saying the history hasn't been charted. Okay, so she selected lines of descent to try and understand. I assume female colonization is formation of cloisters, etc. Maybe. Maybe that's the case. I don't know. So genealogy, in its most common meaning, traces a line of descent. Although we have oh God, is she gonna? Genealogy. I'm terrified that she's going to create a new definition of things. Like half of these notes are weird, different definitions. So, in its most common meaning, traces a line of descent. Although we have come to think of genealogies as related to families, there are genealogies of groups and races as well. In charting a genealogy of female friendship, it is necessary to trace the lines of contact between various groups of female friends to show that we have a common ancestry. I mean, if what there's not it so the implication here seems to be an assumption that's being made that all women come from one source, and given that she's an ex-nun, a point I will not ever stop bringing up, this makes sense if you believe that all women essentially come from Eve. But she seems to imply that, I guess, I mean, she's not, like a lot of things, she's not completely wrong, but she misses the point of a lot of things. Sorry, I'm trying to brain this stuff because it's so obtuse. So, her usage of the term seems to focus on lineages of friend groups, which I'm not sure if that's a thing, but I mean, maybe it is. One way to do this is to seek a resemblance in diversity. A genealogical method, while demonstrating differences between and among those who are related, establishes lines of likeness between and among groups of women in different periods of history and in disparate cultures who are apparently dissimilar. Wait, what? So, while demonstrating differences between and among those who are related, there's lines of likeness between and among groups of women in different periods of history and different cultures who are apparently dissimilar. As Dale Spender writes, I know that the experience of women today is not identical to the experience of women in the past. I know that time, color, class, culture, sexual preference, age, disability all make significant and undeniable differences in women's position in and perception of the world. Given these Catholic women can identify as daughters of Mary. Yeah, that makes sense. I'm less familiar with all the Catholic stuff. So anyways, given these limitations, I'm still inclined to view that as women, we do have a common experience which can be described and explained. It is the experience of being women in a men's world. We share the experience of oppression by men. We share our exclusion from the male frame of reference, our lack of knowledge of a past, our invisibility, our deviancy, our wrongness. No. Dale Spender um, uses like I said, I'm trying to understand this stuff to the best, which essentially says all women uh, have a shared experience in how they are treated by men, which, by the way, is an essentialist point of view, and also is just no. I there's enough diversity in the world. There are similarities and there are differences, and depending on culture. So uh like Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein. That's a book from 1800s, and yeah, she's not thought of as much when it comes to Frankenstein. And yes, that's problematic. But that doesn't mean that applies to let's say women in certain parts of, I want to say certain parts of either, it's somewhere in Southeast Asia there, or China, where women essentially run businesses. There are various aspects where of cultures where women have specific roles, and what roles those are different, and who is considered a woman and a man is different. Essentially, none of this, all of these arguments assume that men and women are universal definitions throughout cultures, and that hasn't been the case. Sorry, not just throughout cultures and time. But anyways, in addition to our common experience of oppression, many women also have a common experience of empowering women, that is, of being for women. So, but like, there have been men who fought for women, there have been women who fought for women, there have been non-binary people who have fought for women, there have been women who fought for non-binary people, there have been tons of minority groups have fought for each other. Like, it wasn't, disabled people were not the only people involved with making sure the ABA passed, or so the ADA passed. So a lot of the Black Panther Party helped the ADA get passed by getting disabled people food and protecting them. I think there's a lesbian bar, someone in one of the activists at least was a lesbian woman who knew lesbian friends and got help from a lesbian bar. And while the movie Crip Camp downplays some of the stuff with relation to race and sexual orientation and gender identity, I believe at one point, the fact of the matter is marginalized people know what, or have at least a glimpse of certain types of oppression, which makes it a lot easier to understand how other types of oppression exist. And so we all fight for each other. but this is saying that the only important fights are women fighting for women, not people fighting for rights. But that's I hate this book. I don't know if I've mentioned that enough. Because the intent of a genealogical tracing is to establish the lines of contact between and among diverse groups of women. It challenges a cultural or historical relativism whose effect is to divide women from themselves and each other. But it's not all been the same ever. Anyways, their true selves or whatever. Whenever selves is capitalized, I think she means like essentially true self of women based off of the definitions I've seen. Anyways, this genealogical tree, however, does not chart unbroken, linear, and undiversified lines. It is rather like a tree whose spreading branches display the interstitial, undiscovered, and unrecorded whereabouts of kin affection. I don't know what she's trying to say that her genealogical thing. I don't know what she's trying to say here or what she's trying to figure out. Anyways, an important tool of genealogy in this book is looking into the background of hetero theory, hetero explanations of woman identified in phenomena, and the disciplines of hetero relations. For example, hetero explanations for the existence of the marriage resistors in China rationalize their quote-unquote deviance by portraying this group of women as coming together out of economic necessity or because of a dearth of men in the particular period and culture rather than as independent women who resisted hetero confinement and chose to spend much of their lives with women. So, like, for one thing, marriage and sex are two different things. But I don't know enough about marriage resistors in China, so I don't know enough about that situation to make any strong declarations like this person, because like you can oftentimes stuff can have more than one factor, and to oversimplify it is not necessarily helpful to describing things. But one who searches for the genealogy of female friendship can utilize these kinds of hetero explanations by looking into the background of what they really mean and what is not said and raising these background dimensions to the foreground. So it is true that certain elements of toxic masculinity do reframe existences and miss out on certain details, and those details should be brought forward. That being said, that doesn't mean that some of the details are not are inherently all false. Life is not a dichotomy like that. People can sometimes get only the tiniest glimpse of the all of the events of something, but doesn't stop that aspect of events from also being true. Anyways, when we examine the quote-unquote disciplines of hetero relations, I don't know what she means by disciplines of hetero relations? Question mark. Um, with eyes that search for evidence or clues of gin affection, we break through the restraints that hetero-relational theories have imposed on a woman-identified search for knowledge. Is she is this person, is she just describing essentially, if you focus with the assumption that something is true and look for it, you can find that truth? Because that's true of anything. If you look hard enough and have an assumption, you can find anything to be true. That's not a way to discern things. Usually you look for the chance that you're wrong. That's generally how you find what's closest to the truth. Anyways, if I not only that such theories have quote-unquote disciplined the memory of gin affection out of academic and social existence, but that in doing so they disclose many unacknowledged fears and subtle threats that men have always perceived in women's affinities for each other. For example, the measures men have taken to suppress gin affection of any form and intensity often says more about perceived power of female friendship than about its actual suppression. So, like, women aren't the only people whose friendships have been discouraged. Friendships and close bonds in general have been, through a variety of aspects of culture, been broken up because people don't like. Everybody has a power in friendship, closeness, community. So breaking that up is essential for preventing revolutionary thought. By making close bonds with people, you are essentially in on some level defying how culture is supposed to be, because oftentimes, or at the very least with American culture, this is the case because of the liberty philosophical position that's given. There's a lot of, doing stuff yourself, and all about everything is very self-centered. And if you do stuff for other people, you are essentially guaranteeing that they'll stay weak or whatever. It's very much the only things you deserve are the stuff that you create yourself for yourself. And friendships, close bonds, kindness, caring, they all on some level defy that reasoning. And they help manifest some of the scary aspects of socialism, but like this seems to treat men as having more power than they actually have, and that does not help. Anyway, this almost seems to paint men as both incredibly powerful and incredibly weak, which is a very fascistic way of thinking. I couldn't think of the better way, the better words. Anyways, as one specific illustration, the extent which lesbian. By the way, when she says lesbians, I don't know if she's talking about like like women in sexual or romantic relationships with women, or she's talking about her weird. She's got such a weird, definite, and broad definition of what it means to be a lesbian that um, I don't know if yeah. So at one specific illustration, the extent to which lesbians have been caricaturized as mannish, as imitating men, is an indicator to the degree which men perceive lesbians as quote unquote real women, that is, not as man made. Um, no, I mean that I don't think that's the reason. I think it's to shame, an attempt to shame women who reach out for power. That's always been my impression, and also there may be some cognitive dissonance with stuff because if people are unable to um, understand how women can have actual agency with stuff, it I think they can't understand how you can do that and be a woman. But that's more the assumption based on toxic masculinity, not based on whatever her atypical version of alleged feminism. Anyways, also the ways in which men have described lesbians as afraid of relationships with men is an indication of men's acute but unacknowledged recognition of the fearlessness of lesbians. That is, lesbian ability and strength to defy conventional hetero relationships and standards. Now, I don't know which men she's talking about because afraid of relationships with men is not how I've ever heard a lesbian describe. Not having found the right man is more likely to be a definition, or just a lot of stuff with relation to the assumption that of heterosexuality with men and women. So, like, I don't think it's a recognition of. I don't think anything of toxic masculinity is a recognition of the power of lesbians as much as it is um, an assumption that women can never be as powerful as men in any way, shape, or form. So I'm not sure Miss Raymond here understands. Miss Raymond has an atypical view of reality. Anyways, looking into the background of hetero explanations and the disciplines of hetero relations creates a counter memory. On page 25. The word used by Foucault. Okay, but that's not helpful to me. Dear Lord, not any of this. Counter memory. She keeps saying that we shouldn't listen to men, but then she also references men in philosophy very proudly. A lot of this book involves a fair amount of absolutes and contradictions, and strange as terminology by philosophers like Foucault. She is clearly a fan of Foucault, uh, who also writes like this type of bullshit. Counter memory is able to glimpse that which arises in opposition to prevailing memories of a subject or event. What? Okay, so counter memory is able to glimpse that which arises in opposition to prevailing memories of subject or event. For example, the history of the history, biology, and psychology of hetero relations tells us that woman has always been quote unquote naturally attracted to man. If this is true, counter memory questions why hetero relations for women have to be enforced by the myriad prohibitions against skin affection, ranging from the brutalities of clitoridectomy, woman battering, and sexual slavery to so-called softcore pornography, which keep women, quote-unquote, in line with one man in particular or with men in general. So, like, pornography as an industry has changed significantly in the internet era. A lot of women are their own bosses in modern pornography. It's not the same, but also counter memory seems to be questioning contradictions between reality and explanations of reality, which once again is not a bad thing to do, to question why reality doesn't function as described versions of how reality is supposed to be, would naturally lead to. Sort of like if poor people enjoyed being poor, why do they try to get jobs? Sort of thing. It's that seems to be the general reasoning being used here, or at the very least, potentially the reasoning used by Foucault, because I am not sure this person in particular really questions things too often. So much as creates narratives and then tries to fit reality within the narratives, which is the opposite of this counter memory. I guess that term does kind of make sense if you're countering with memory, maybe? I don't know. Countering what you're told with memory. Anyways, so, counter memory raises the question of why, according to Freudian theory, a woman has to transfer her initial attraction to the first woman in her life, her mother, to a man if, as Freud acknowledges, skin affection was her aboriginal attraction. Yeah, Freud is very, very much wrong with some of his reasoning. I'm not here to defend Freud. For years, psychoanalytical thought has postulated that what is required for mature female sexuality is by the way, and also Freud she's talking about female genital mutilation. Why? So she brought it up before. She's saying that it's a way to oppress women, but obviously circumcision is another cultural thing, which, while not as extreme as the cultural thing that she's talking about, still occurs. And also, her framing of psychoanalytical psychology relates only to early Freud, completely ignores Jung, because Carl Jung and Freud did not agree. For years, psychoanalytic thought has postulated that what's required for mature female sexuality is a shift in women's erotic allegiance away from a first level woman to a man. This is one of those things where, yeah, like I said, I'm pretty sure Freud mentioned that reasoning was wrong later in life. I think Freud has been repeatedly been shown to be wrong by various even psychoanalytical therapists at the time. Now, that being said, that doesn't stop there from being people like Jordan Peterson, people like, I don't know, a lot of people who just focus on very early psychoanalytics and not like past the 1930s. This is often referred to as the Oedipal conflict in women. Feminist counter-memory, in its quest for the origins of kin affection, must learn to detect what lies in back of such assertions. But like, yeah, Freud's assertions aren't even assumed to be correct by all psychoanalytics people, and psychoanalytics was also starting to not be the preferred version of psychology, I think, even by the 70s. So it's almost like attacking a straw man. But Michel Foucault has remarked that, quote unquote, oh god, fucking Foucault quote, I'm not a fan of Foucault's method of writing, since it is also overly complex. Clearly, this Miss Raymond is more of a fan of it. Anyways, genealogy operates on a field of entangled and confused parchments on documents that have been scratched over and recopied many times. Using the word documentation in its white... So, like, Foucault seems to be describing the problems with genealogy, because it's someone wrote it down and then someone copied it. So there are errors in copying, and we don't know always the validity of what's written down. So that's not a bad quote, and by far not the most annoying Foucault statement I've ever read. Anyways, using the word documentation in its widest sense is already something that concerns me. We must note that much of the documentation about kin affection is scarce and entangled, already having been subject to hetero-revision. We see this revision work in our own time, such as Doris Faber's book, The Life of Lorena Hickok, ER's friend. It is as American as hetero pie that Franklin Roosevelt had his mistress. Yet the devoted friendship and most probably the lover relationship that existed between Eleanor Roosevelt and Lorena Hickok is perceived by Faber as an aberration that the author must rationalize, soften, transmute into something else, and apologize for. Faber tells readers how aghast she was when she discovered the content of many of the hitherto unexamined and unrevealed letters that passed between Eleanor Roosevelt and Lorena. So, I mean, I guess she does acknowledge that women do have actual romantic and sexual relations with each other. But anyways, in fact, Faber was so upset about the extraordinary emotional revelations in the correspondence that she tried to persuade the director of the FDR library to postpone and thus suppress the disclosure of the letters. This has been a long history of things. This has less to do, I think, with women in each other. Rather, the concept of women in a relation with other women defies the heterosexual narrative and the idealized and simplified version of reality in which women are only attracted to men and men are only attracted to women. Unable to accomplish this, Faber takes great pains throughout her book to set the record, quote unquote, straight, pun intended, as it were, to lend a contextual perspective to some of the more emotionally intense letters and to portray Eleanor Roosevelt as the quote unquote great woman and Lorena Hickok as the partner victimized irrevocably by a childhood hardship, flavored by a hint of sexual abuse, who inevitably played on Eleanor Roosevelt's sympathy for the downtrodden. I mean, that's kind of true of a lot of narratives when people are atypical, and I'm sure narratives which this person uses for anyone who's trans, since this is a transphobe's documentation to describe aspects of her view of philosophy and feminism. Anyways, much of the documentation about women and gay affection has also been destroyed, erased, and made insignificant. A lot of things about any accomplishments that women have made has been that has definitely been the case for. Anyways, Vera Brittain, in her quote unquote, or Testament of Friendship, noted that the friendships of men have enjoyed glory and acclamation, but the friendships of women have usually not merely unsung, but mocked, belittled, and falsely interpreted. Elizabeth Gould Davis points out that the library at Alexandria, which contained much of the documentation on women-centered societies, was burned. That was likely burned for other reasons, but because there are certain aspects of history that are just lost for other reasons, but definitely sexism is a factor to why the Bible doesn't include the Mary Magdalene, Mary Magdalene as one of the disciples of Jesus, since there were those versions of the Bible that were rejected at the Council of Nicaea. Anyways, the feminist scholar who searches for library and research information on women's history is confounded by the ways in which data on women have been cataloged or not cataloged. Early and recent feminist books go out of print. Feminist scholars all see that she's using the feminism as a categorization here, even though she said that she hated that as a general categorization to describe all feminism and put all feminism together. Anyways, feminist scholars have always seemed to be starting over because the work of our foreresistors has been buried or erased. So, yes, to some degree. I mean, sexism has been a part of history for a long period of time, and there have been one of the. I know one of the fundamental aspects of calculus was discovered by a woman. I know the lady with the cooking show invented shark repellent for submarines that is like still used today. Julia Child. Julia Child is amazing. If you look up anything about Julia Child, she is just super awesome. She's like, for one thing, Julia Child is like 6'2", and that's why she wasn't allowed in women's military. She tried to get into a general military and didn't, so she went into essentially the forerunner to the CIA during World War II, and did overseas work. And sometime before that, she invented, like I said, a shark repellent that's important for submarines and missiles and stuff. Yeah, Julia Child is a badass and could beat most people in a fight, probably, I assume, because there was also combat training that definitely occurred in the sort of special forces, which Julia Child found her way in because she couldn't join the regular military. I say Julia Child is 6'2". She might just be 6 feet. I don't know. I know she's taller than me, and taller than a lot of people. Let me look up Julia Child height. 6'2". Okay, I was right. I have a memory that sometimes is correct. Anyways, finally, genealogy is not reticent to excavate. Genealogy is not reticent to excavate the ruins. A genealogical method does not idealize gen affection or romanticize its possibilities. It takes into account the ruptures, betrayals, and dishonor that have existed amidst the world of female friendships. Because this person uses words so weirdly, I think sometimes she uses things general way, and sometimes she uses it to suggest a different meaning, which just makes things complicated and confusing. Anyways, much can be learned from the dissensions and disappointments that friends have been divided from our true selves and have at times become discontinuous with our own ideals. And we have made historical mistakes and sustained great losses. I look for evidence of dissent in those places and non-places where good affection has been lost or let go, as well as those situations where it's been enhanced. My method of genealogy is not concerned with defining relations of causation. Wait, so Miss Raymond, genealogy is not concerned with defining relations of causation. So she doesn't want to look for the cause of things. The exact positioning of each clue or fragment vis-a-vis another. Overall laws of symmetry between groups of female friends, or even key periodization points. What I want to establish is a way of tracing genealogy rather than an exhaustive account of the genealogy of female friendship. Wait, what? She doesn't care about the causation, but wants to find a way to trace genealogy without causation? Anyways, I hope that this method of genealogy, using the tools of tracing lines of contact, seeking resemblance in diversity, looking into the background of hetero explanations and the disciplines of hetero relations, establishing a counter memory, untangling confused documents, and excavating the ruins will disclose some of the content as well as a method of the genealogy of female friendship. But that is um uh she seems to be on a quest for a true self of she seems to be on a quest for a true self of women. She seems to be like, this is how uh uh to discover what women should be. That seems to be the general motivation of this, is to discover what women should be, which is essentially saying that there is that is uh this assumes that anyone should be a particular way. So the it's one of those inherent problems I have with stuff like this. There are certain presuppositions which occur. So I might have to do more an afterwards to all this BS, because there seem to be very clear desires to try to discover purpose, but it is an assumption that there is an essential purpose, and because it's essentially it's an antithesis to nihilism, because nihilism suggests that there is no inherent purpose. She is assuming that there is an inherent purpose and inherent meaning to what it means to be a woman, and that isn't all based around cultural stuff. And so she seems to be trying to find what an ideal woman should be. Anyways, the political is personal, which, I mean, politics are ingrained in every aspect of human life. So, yeah, so emphasis on the political aspects of feminism expressed in the early adage, the personal is political, has kept many from recognizing that a complete feminist vision must also turn those words around. Oh, that's why the personal is political. I mean, the personal is political and the political is person. I mean, that's not why. Turning those words around doesn't change the meaning. By politicizing areas of female life, feminism cannot ignore or erode the effective bonds which hold women together. Women must pay as much attention to these human bonds, to our ways of loving and living, as we do to our feminist politics. A purely political definition of the word feminist that accents oppression, struggle, conflict, and resistance is circumscribed and limited. It is as absurd as the Marxist interpretation of the personal primary as worker, as the person primarily as worker. Um, like there's a lot of hate to hate about certain aspects of Karl Marx's reasoning, which but that doesn't inherently mean that every aspect of the reasoning of Marxist theory is wrong. The thing is, just by being aware that me being aware that sexism exists and that transphobia exists doesn't inherently prevent me from saying or making sexist actions or transphobic statements or actions. It doesn't stop that. That's something I have to discern and address. Okay. So there's a short chapter. Feminists have talked much about the ideals and realities of community and sisterhood. Sisterhood. She is such a nun. Anyways, sorry, ex-nun. Anyways, many different schools of feminism have stressed the political nature of feminism and feminist action in the world. Because it is political. Anyways, I would suggest that such discussions have lacked a certain vitality and vision because they have not considered friendship as a basis for such community. Feminists talk much about the ideals and realities of community and connection, essentially. What do you mean not considered friendship as basis for such community? I mean, friendship is almost the basis of any community to some degree. Thus, what often emerges in feminist theory is a formal and often derivative characterization of feminist community based on leftist, egalitarian, and collective theories of association that lack a deeper and inner feminist community, deeper and inner meaning. So I get the impression that she has an issue with leftist egalitarian reasoning. Friendship invests the idea and reality of feminist community with a quote-unquote moreness. It augments the notion of community defined as an quote-unquote association of persons who interact in the more positivistic regions of due proportion, egalitarianism, and concern for the common welfare, thereby infusing feminist community with an energy or vital force of affection in its widest meaning of gin affection. Friendship gives sisterhood the capacity to become gin effective. What? Imbue sisterhood with sisterhood. So, like, this seems to assume that people don't. Feminists aren't friends with each other ever. A slogan that became popular in the current wave of feminism when this book was written is sisterhood is powerful. In Robin Morgan's most recent book, which includes writings from women around the world, we see also a confirmation that sisterhood is global. That women exist around the world and care about having rights. Anyways, That's why there are women sumo wrestlers, even though that practice is technically outlawed, or at the very least was outlawed in Japan. I don't know if it still is. The necessity for sisterhood arose out of the recognition that women were and are oppressed in all cultures throughout all periods of history. Um, that's a generalization. I'm not sure it's all cultures throughout all periods of history, but most cultures and throughout most of history. I don't disagree that it's most cultures and most of history, but like if you go back far enough, things get potentially more complex, and also um, there are certain tribal cultures which do not have the same attitudes towards women. So, like, I feel like this completely disregards indigenous cultures because indigenous cultures are function very differently, oftentimes from some of the more, what's the word I'm looking for? Um, when countries try to take over stuff, I can't think of the word. It's not fascism. It's what we do, and China does in a slightly different way, but like or significantly different ways. China does it economically. U.S. and Russia do it, or Russia does it through direct conquering of lands, which is why they're attacking Ukraine. Um, U.S. does it through puppet governments in different countries. It's essentially trying to take over massive amounts of the world for the power of the nation. Anyways, um, I seriously doubt Miss Raymond has looked into all cultures. I assume it would not surprise me if that's an assumption, just a flat out assumption that all cultures are like the culture you were in when you grew up. Or, I mean, there is a lot of oppression of women in a lot of a lot of the powerful nations or the powerful cultures. Um, but I think all is a bit much. Although there are also various cultures that didn't always only have two genders. Uh, like, yeah, that's another story. In sisterhood, feminists began to struggle against all forms of tyranny over women, rape, pornography, battering, international sexual slavery, and so on. So, like, pornography. This book is not particular new, and there was a major problem with the pornography industry. But that being said, women have largely taken control of the pornography industry, or a large portion of the pornography industry, not all of it. I think the general distribution, but there's been a lot more freedom and a lot less oppression with regards to pornography. Rape, everyone can get raped. Uh, as someone who's Catholic, she should be well aware of the rape of young boys, as she's a former nun. Anyways, battering also, I mean, like, rape and battering happen more often to men, and definitely problematic aspects of pornography at the time. Bad. International sexual slavery, major bad, affects women more, or more often girls. And to realize that women had much in common Um, not individual women do not all experience that stuff, and there's a class based system. So like most people, most white women do not get sold into sexual slavery, or most white rich women at the very least. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm sure it does, but usually sexual slavery is about more oppressed groups in other ways. And there is a problem that Bell Hooks has written about many times with regards to white feminism ignoring the aspects of racism that can't be escaped. Um, Anyways, the slogan "Sisterhood is powerful" signaled a coming together of women formerly separated from each other. Ideals of sisterhood began to materialize in feminist literature, theory, and action. Different schools of feminism all stress the necessity to build strong solidarity of sisterhood. So that, yes, I mean, there should be solidarity with any marginalized group because there is oppression that occurs with various marginalized groups, and ignoring that oppression or just downplaying it is not helpful. We need to fight for, we need to all fight for each other. Otherwise, if you're not if someone's not being fought for, why should they fight for you? Um, I mean, it's one of the most important parts of intersectionality, which this person is very much against, likely. Over the past 2 decades, we have seen that indeed sisterhood is powerful. There have emerged rape crisis centers, battered women's shelters, feminist bookstores, women's health clinics, feminist journals and magazines, women's studies programs, and all sorts of women's conferences. All of these ventures generated a sisterly solidarity, but many of them have also failed because, in my opinion, there's nothing to hold them together beyond what I call the communion of resistance. There are a lot of reasons something can fail. Um, yeah, so unfortunately, sisterhood that was created in the struggle against all forms of male tyranny. Oh God. Did not mean that women became friends, that they shared a common world beyond the struggle. Sisterhood did not automatically create a private and public space where real friendship could occur. Poor white girls are popular for trafficking. Yes. Poor white girls, yes. That's true. Also, a lot of people who were formerly detained by the ICE. Poverty is a driver of trafficking. Yes, that is true. I did not state that well, and you are correct. Um, I am just my brain was thinking more about the many children who just disappeared from ICE facilities who have not been found ever again, and likely have been sold to sex trafficking. Unfortunately, the sisterhood that was created in the struggle against all forms of military did not mean the women became friends, that they shared a common worldview beyond the struggle. Sisterhood did not automatically create a private and public space where female friendship could occur. Many women who fought so hard and who believed that the sisterhood of struggle against male tyranny Oh my god. So, fucking guilty. See, like, transphobes use this stuff, especially in, British transphobes, use this talk of male tyranny. Um, uh, implies that men are inherently or that's not fair. I'll leave exact definitions of what's meant by that, but like, I can't guarantee this person has one necessarily. Um, Many women who fought so hard and believed sisterhood could struggle against male tyranny would give them more than it did with each other and got burnt out or disillusioned with women. Um, well, I mean, I'd be disillusioned if I tried to fight together with her, but she explained this stuff better through the heteronormative aspects of culture, and um, male tyranny is a new term which she does a lot. Sustained emphasis on female oppression, the state of atrocity, and the communion of resistance can have the unintended effect of making the female experience or situation synonymous with the colonization experience. Is she co-opting the term colonization to imply women were colonized by men? Because if so, that's effed up. I hate this. Um, feminist feminist must mean something different. Not only women in struggle and conflict with men and male supremacy, but women in concert with our true selves and each other. Feminists must also be defined by the reality of female friendship in our lives. As feminist women must be for each other. Female friendship gives depth and spirit to political vision of feminism and is itself a profoundly political act. Without kin affection, our politics and political struggles remain superficial and more easily shortchanged. I mean, it's not, or more easily short-circuited. Sorry, change may occur, but perhaps only for a limited time, and only on levels that do not really shake the foundations of hetero reality. When women assert their power of absence to all forms of hetero relations, we assert a power of presence to our true selves. This is indeed empowering. What? Women assert their power of absence to... Oh, absence from men in all forms. Women should being with men in any way, shape, or form to find their true selves. Did I mention this person's an ex-nun? That does indeed color her views. It is not enough for feminists to dissect the corpse of patriarchal pathologies. It is not enough for women to depict the state of heteroreality. Women have not always been for men. We need to know the genealogy of women who did not stand and who do not exist for men or in pivotal relation to them. We need to create a vision of affection. What women search for can be as important as what we find. Um, I dear God. Okay. What page is that? Page 27. So the thing is, a lot of society doesn't just tell women that they need to act in a specific way. It tells men that they need to act in a specific way. If there's too much deviation for either of those, there's a lot of hate, cultural hate by certain conservative groups. And when it comes to this, um, it seems to ignore this seems to ignore a lot of the effects of this and focuses on trying to find the true meaning of what it means to be a woman or whatnot in a way that's completely and totally separated from men. But it's not. The thing is that is assuming that there's an inherent way of existing as a woman, and that assumption creates all sorts of levels of problems. Um, Through that assumption, she assumes women who have relations with men are not true women. And it's a very absurd dichotomous point of view that creates a lot of problematic stuff when attempting to apply it to reality. And to some degree, this is the perfect thing for conservatives to fight against because it is absurd and to some degree easy for random people to hate. It's also saying pick a side and there's a correct side. So it's essentially against pansexuality, bisexuality, heterosexuality. It's saying heterosexuality is either it kind of swaps back and forth between assuming that heterosexuality is a cultural thing versus a biological thing. She is not the clearest with this stuff. So I think next week what I shall do is I will hopefully just in general get a bunch more sleep. I'm starting to suspect cardio is a major factor inhibiting a lack of cardio is inhibiting my energy and motivation for exercise. So I think I'm gonna just focus on cardio first. Sorry, that's a unrelated point, but like Yeah, so I think next week I'll probably react to some political stuff, and then maybe the week after, and then I'll go and do this again. So until then, until like I don't know, until I see you next. Have a wonderful day. Take care of yourselves. Um, get more sleep. I know that's projecting to some degree, but like, and learn when you can, do what you can, but don't be too hard on yourself, and just have a wonderful time. Oh, and like, subscribe, share, comment. Especially if especially with regards to flaws in my reasoning. I am. I try to be as open as I can when it comes to good faith criticism. Um, and um, I mean, even some bad faith criticism. I don't want to completely silence criticism because I want to learn, and I'm not perfect. Anyways, I'll be streaming some League of Legends and some Hades in a little over an hour on Twitch. So, yeah, have a wonderful time. Bye.